Ignite your passion for the eternal Word while searching for ancient tested answers to today's questions. Delve into the mysteries of the Bible to discover ancient Jewish wisdom with Rabbi Daniel Lapin. Now, here is today's program.
Hi, welcome to this program here on TCT. I'm Rabbi Daniel Lapin. This is my wife, Susan, and we're absolutely thrilled to have this opportunity to be together with you. Our ministry is absolutely focused on this passionate desire to make ancient Jewish wisdom accessible to everybody. Yes, even you, regardless of your background, regardless of your faith, or even if you have no faith at all. This is a means of gaining a glimpse into the mind of God. This is an opportunity to get a sense of God's message to humanity that he delivered through Moses on Mount Sinai 3,000 years ago. And one of the things we've been discussing a lot lately is that the most fundamental avenue to personal fulfillment and societal success is marriage. Show me a culture that has a strong marriage rate. Show me a culture that somehow the overwhelming majority of people live in happy, fulfilling, stable, long-term marriages. Show me a culture in which all the children are raised in intact families by loving parents. I will show you a culture that is doing well. I will show you a culture that is succeeding, a culture that is durable and that will endure. And so marriage really lies at the basis of it all. In terms of our own happiness, it is hard to think of anything that comes ahead of a successful and fulfilling marriage. And you might say a relationship with God, yes, but the whole point is that God wants, as step number one, for each and every one of us to be in a successful marriage. That's why he began his message with the first few chapters of Genesis focused exclusively on the subject of marriage. That's what we're talking about. The opening chapters of Genesis are not a do-it-yourself manual on how to build a universe around the kitchen table in your spare time. The opening chapters of Genesis are how to build a marriage, not in your spare time, but as very much a focus of your life. How to get married, how to stay married, and how to make your marriage better. And it's interesting, of course, that the idea of the Garden of Eden is the sort of idyllic place. This is the place where marriage was formed. This was the crucible, if you like, in which God laid the foundations for this miraculous condition nobody would ever have dreamed of on our own, called marriage. And then Adam and Eve are evicted from the Garden of Eden. And the closing of that story has us reading the words, and God placed the cherubs at the entrance to the Garden of Eden to guard the way. And everybody reads that and immediately jumps to the wrong conclusion. Everybody assumes that those cherubs are there to guard the way to stop Adam and Eve from getting back to the Garden of Eden. Nothing could be further from the truth. Those cherubs are there to guard the way and make sure it stays open so that Adam and Eve and their children and their children's children and you and I and us can all find our way back to the Garden of Eden. And how do you do that? What is the avenue? Well, once again, one of the techniques that is found in the Torah for guiding us through, one of the things that I try and decode as I make ancient Jewish wisdom accessible to everybody, and in the context of marriage, do so with this marvelous audio CD program that I really would like you to have, is to show the connections. You see, this is the first time we ever read of cherubs. Here we are, Book of Genesis, we just began. Wow, cherubs, what's that? Well, guess when the next time is that we meet these creatures? The next time you see cherubs is in the book of Exodus when the Ark of the Covenant is being constructed. And God's directions are, what shall you place in gold on the Ark of the Covenant? 2 cherubs, that's right. Same cherubs, them's the cherubs, that's right. What is their job? To remind us that the way back to the Garden of Eden is through the priceless treasure that is enshrined inside that box. That Ark of the Covenant contains Scripture. That contains the Torah. And that is the way through these cherubs back to those cherubs who are busy keeping that door open so that no matter what happens, each and every one of us can still find our way back to that Garden of Eden and make it possible for us to get in there.
If I can interject, when God sends Adam and Eve from the garden, again, you don't find this in the English, and you miss. The translation is that I don't know what the English translation says. It says he sent them from the garden or he expelled them from the garden. The word used in the Hebrew is the same word used in Hebrew for divorce. You literally can translate the sentence, he divorced Adam from the Garden of Eden. In other words, there was a distancing between God. God was much closer to Adam than he ever is to anybody else. There was a different and unique relationship, and that relationship has been damaged. And one of the ways back to that relationship is actually through marriage. You might think, well, I should really cut myself off from all other people and I should just work on getting my relationship with God. And instead, God is giving a message and saying, no, your marriage, and if you behave properly in a marriage, that is a step back on the road to learning how to have a relationship with me.
It's a revolutionary idea, isn't it? Because I think most people, if they didn't know anything, would intuitively think that if you wanted to have a close relationship with God, well, you should make sure you don't have a physical relationship with your wife or with anybody at all, right?
Or an emotional,
or even an emotional attachment.
And social attachment.
Yeah, and what God is saying is the way back to me, in a sense, is through marriage. That's
and
really
in effect,
part of it.
one of the things, what is something very, very important about our relationship with God? It is absolutely unique. We don't have the same relationship with other gods. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Well, you get to begin an understanding of that with having one relationship that you must not ruin by adultery. You must have a relationship with another person that is totally and completely different than a relationship you have with anybody else. And it doesn't matter, even when it's going through a rough time, even if it's not what you thought it would be, you still have to stay faithful to that relationship.
In fact, we were just being told just this past weekend, a couple was telling us about the journey from hell that they just experienced. They took a trip with two children, and everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong, and worse. It was the most appalling experience, and the children were crying. It was terrible. It was a 1-week trip on 4 different airplanes. It was appalling. You've all had that one trip from hell. Well, this was it. It was just terrible. And my wife and I only had one question for them: is how was the relationship between the two of you at that point? Throughout the difficult times of that journey, what was it like? And they laughed and they said, we were so happy. We've only been married 4 years, but we've listened to your teachings on this. And no matter how bad things got, and no matter how upset we got at taxis and at airports and at train schedules, between us, we just laughed. We were okay with each other. And that's terribly important. When I've occasionally blundered, and it's sometimes on directions where I've driven us miles out of our way because I missed a turning or a road map and it was going to make us late for dinner, I always sit and wait for a withering assault from my wife. It's never happened, never came. Thank you, my dear. I really appreciate that.
But there are times the relationship with God can be kind of tough. Things, there's illness, there's financial difficulties, and you want to say, hey, are we still in a relationship?
Yeah.
And
God, remember me?
Yeah, this isn't exactly how you treat someone you love. And one of the ways that you get a feel for how you can love someone even when times are rough is by making that commitment in the marriage. And I have a friend whose grandparents celebrated their 50th anniversary. And at the 50th anniversary, the grandmother told her, I was engaged to somebody else. And at the engagement party, your grandfather came. He was a friend of this boy I was engaged to. And within a few weeks, I had canceled that engagement, and your grandfather and I got married. Now, when that happened, people probably said she was flighty and everything. Well, 50 years down the road, it was a successful marriage. But what was the trick? What if that man had walked in the door an hour after the wedding to the other guy? Totally different story.
Yes.
You're dating, you're engaged.
Means nothing.
Fine, means nothing. The minute you are married, you're making a commitment. And that commitment is to an absolutely sacred relationship that no one else can interfere with, just like your relationship with God.
And I think
sacred.
that's, yeah, that is exactly the important thing. There's sort of an idea here that commandment number 2 of the 10 commandments parallels commandment number 7, where commandment number 2 is no other gods. We have a special relationship. God and you.
And God's just to say, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have a little idol that you worship. It means anything else that comes before me.
Yes, nothing
anything else you run your life by,
Right.
how you guide your life, other than me.
And commandment number 7 is treat your marriage with equal sacredness. Nobody else, nothing else. This is, in essence, a part of who you are. And that comes through so beautifully in chapter 1, where we read, chapter 1 of Genesis, and God created him, and male and female he created them. In one verse...
Wait, can you just say that again more slowly,
Yes.
please?
God created him. Male and female, he created them. Right? And so
Little pronoun.
there's a little
difficulty
problem.
there.
Is it a him or is it a them? And the idea is that we have to learn this basic lesson, that at one and the same time, this is two people that become one new entity, something completely separate that didn't exist before. A man and a woman are now married. They're still a man and a woman, but there is a new entity called an us, the marriage. And I must tell you that I think Susan and I both feel the same sense of unease and discomfort every time we're with a married couple, where the wife sometimes says, "So I called the decorator to my house." No, sweetie, it should have been our house. It's not your house. It's both of you. Or an instance where we're familiar with, where a particular individual was invited to be honored at a particular event, and he left his wife out of it, and we were astonished. I mean, it's terrible. If somebody invites me, they've got to say Rabbi and Mrs. Daniel Lapin, not just one of us. We go together. Now, we may decide that we're not both going, but things are united. We're one. And that is the meaning of chapter 1. I think it's verse 22, or is it 27? One of those verses where it says, and God created him, male and female, he created them. There is a singleness to the couple. There's also a duality to the couple. And we've got to recognize that in the marriage, there is a unity. It's not my son, right? I want you to meet my son. If my wife is with me, I say our son. I would never say my son, or I never say my children. It's our children, and that's something.
And speech reflects, sometimes when you say something and how you talk about it helps your brain actually process it. In other words, if you don't actually feel that your marriage is the main unit, then at that point, start speaking about it as if it is, because you'll follow, your actions will follow your speech, your thought process will.
And that's terribly important. And when we come back, one of the things we have to look at is how to balance privacy and unity. How do you build the unity in a marriage while at the same time maintaining the fact that each one is an individual? We'll talk to you now.
If you've enjoyed the rich wisdom of Rabbi Daniel Lapin, then we invite you to delve deeper into the Genesis journeys with Madam, I'm Adam, Decoding the Marriage Secrets of Eden. This CD volume closely examines the lives of Adam and Eve while eliminating God's biblical blueprint for marriage. This audio series includes 12 lessons and features: Embrace the Difference, Adam and the Hippo, and Burning with Passion. This handsomely packaged volume includes a Hebrew language study guide too. To order, call 866-338-5033. And for your donation of $50 or more to TCT, you too can learn timeless truths and permanent principles necessary for establishing and maintaining your family. Reserve your audio volume of Madam, I'm Adam.